right button or left button?
It's the right to
Right, the right button. Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to speak briefly on, not so briefly, we allocated something like 3 minutes to tell you about Procsa, Client Consultant Professional Service Agreement, and to condense something that's been going on for 11 years into 3 minutes. This is going to be quite tricky. I think a bit of project management is this one. Basically what I'm going to do is just run through briefly what Procsa is all about, who is Procsa, what are the Procsa documents, and why Procsa. Those are the 3 issues I want to cover in this short talk. We say, who is Procsa? Procsa is a Professional Consultant Service Agreement Committee, a committee which was established about 11 years ago to actually put together a suite of documents for the building professionals and clients. It was founded in 2001, all voluntary participation, and most of the original members who started in this committee are still active in the committee today. And it's representative of consultants and client bodies, the client body being SAPOA, who represents the property owners. The constituent members of Procsa, and this is what forms the committee, is the Africa Association of Quantity Surveyors, Association of Construction Project Managers, Association of South African Quantity Surveyors, Consulting Engineers of South Africa, the South African Black Technical and Allied Careers Organization, South African Institute of Architects, the guys who bounce around a lot, and the South African Property Owners Association. Those are the constituent members of Procsa who put the documents together. Lots of arguments and lots of input and intelligence gone into this lot to bring about the set of documents that we have. What are the Procsa documents? It's a suite of documents to regulate terms of engagement between the client and the consultants. It's in the interest of standardization and good practice in the construction industry. The agreement has the terms and conditions. We have an Annexure A, which is the schedule of variables, which is for each specific project. The agreement terms and conditions is standard across the board, and that applies to all consultants and in all cases from all projects. What does change is your Annexure A, which is the variables, being the project, the scope of the work, etc. Annexure B is the services specific to each discipline, and that sets out the service to be provided for the scope of work for each project by each member of the consulting team. And then there are further annexures, Annexure C or D, whatever it is, in which we spell out fees, disbursements, rates, and those sort of things. The ones that are not covered generically. The document structure, we're looking at the new document structure at the moment. The terms and conditions is one document, and Annexure A and B for each discipline is a separate document. We're looking at combining the whole lot. So you will have one document which has the terms and conditions and Annexure A and B for each discipline, and there's provision for you to add in your own Annexure C or D, whatever you want to call it. Why Procsa? It's an efficient management from the client's point of view. The client's and consultants' obligations are defined, and it meets all the requirements of statutory bodies, codes of conduct. We have, for instance, in the Architects Council, we have a code of conduct which requires us to have a written agreement with our client for each project, and it sets out various matters like the scope of work, the scope of service we're going to provide, the professional indemnity insurance, the escape clause for cancellation, and those. There are about six or eight items which have to be put into a document, and the Procsa document covers all of those. And it's generally used in the South African construction industry, and we have increased usage in Africa, in Mozambique and other parts of Africa. The document is being used. The lectures available quickly. These are available and plans. There's the architect, principal agent, principal consultant, quantity surveyor, civil engineer, structural engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, project manager, and we have a document for the health and safety consultant, fire consultants, wet services, development manager is in the process of being finalized, and there are still other annexures planned. And there's also a generic blank document. So if there's a consultant like, for instance, a traffic engineer or an acoustic consultant, we don't have a document yet, they can use the blank document to fill in the information. The one that we also are looking at is where the architect is appointed as principal consultant and principal agent, and there's no project manager. It's a new document that we are still looking at. Just a note, all the above documents specifically been designed for use where a project manager is appointed. Project manager is not appointed, a consultant should be appointed to carry out such services.
In this segment, what Adrian explained earlier, E Procsa is this electronic service which comes with the collaboration service as well. I'm going to just briefly explain. Components making up this service. Reference. What do we mean by reference? It's purely view only. So electronically, you will call up any of those documents and refer. So it's basically an electronic library of any of those documents for view only purposes. Then obviously the next step would be printing, and we have two types: ad hoc printing or prepaid. So by prepaid, you can put in a 500 Rand and dock off credits as you print, or you can just use on a prepayment on a credit card basis as and where you go. The two options in terms of the printing of the document. The add-on, which we're going to talk about now, which is the collaboration. The value really sitting in the collaboration element of this product. Okay, Sam mentioned those are the various consultants that it's provided for. Allows users, this is the collaboration side, this is where users are collaborating with other members of the project team to complete these particular agreements. Who is this useful to? It would be obviously your project manager, your principal agent, and all the various disciplines, employers possibly, and the full consulting discipline involved in the project. Advantage, obviously, 24/7 convenient online access, cost and time saving, eliminating collection of hard copy documents. Hard copy documents, as a matter of interest, I understand is going to be falling away, specifically in the Procsa document. So it is only going to become available on an electronic basis. Unlimited printing, so you would pay for your document and it would entitle you to print as many times as you want for that particular project. No Adobe Acrobat Writer is needed. Obviously you need a reader. In our earlier versions we found we needed to provide writer. We've now come up with a way where writer is not necessary. So you just need Adobe Reader. All the documents are available in the form of Adobe in PDF format. Documents are all stored in a particular project folder, so you would create a folder for your project and all the various agreements specific to that project are stored together. So it's folder driven. You assign document contributors to a particular agreement. So what that means is at the creation of that document, you would say, I wish to collaborate with a particular contributor, and that person is invited by means of an email either to view only that document or to view and edit that document. So he receives an email, he'll get a username and password, he clicks the username and password, accesses the document and views what's available or views and edits. So that's the automated email, completed, editing notification to and from the document contributor. We have provided a facility, especially in these Procsa documents. It's quite a tedious process in completing all the scope of services. So we find from going from project A to project B, 90% of the fields remain the same, other than possibly the quantum of the fee, maybe the project name. Other than a few of the fields, the bulk of the information remains the same. So in order to prevent you having to recapture all that information from project to project, we've provided a facility that says, copy the principal agent agreement that I used on that project, and it goes and sucks in all the data and information into your current, and then you just go and amend the few fields that become particular to that project. So it becomes considerable time saving in recreating and filling in. As each document is saved by a collaborator or the author of that document, it's keeping version control. So you can see and monitor as it goes from version 1, 2, 3, and at any point you can go back and open and compare what happened between version 4 and version 5, what fields have been filled in between the two versions. Because you don't want to collaborate with somebody, suddenly he goes and he adds in an extra 0 on the fee, nobody picks it up, and that suddenly becomes the agreement. So you would do a quick version control to see at version 4 is where I left off. He's now created 5. What's actually changed between version 4 and 5? And it will highlight the changed fields between those two versions. Just in terms of pricing, we've made a launching special price, if you wish to call it, which we'll hold open until the end of April. It's at 85 Rand per office, not per user, it's per office, which gives access to anybody within an office for that 85 Rand, including the document collaboration. So it gives you access to the collaboration service as well. Just got some screen captures just so you can get a feel of the look of how it works rather than going online. So this is actually what you would see if you were now logging into the document collaboration service. You will log in either as an office administrator or a project administrator. The reason we've done that is office administrator is the creator of a project, and the project administrators then load up the documents. So that the office administrator is in control of the funding. He controls which projects to create and who has access. So he sets that up, he decides who he wants to give access, and then the project administrator then runs forward, moving forward from that point. So he'll start off and he'll give a project name, a project reference, and he will decide who does he want to allocate as the project administrator. So the project administrator is then the guy who controls the completion of that document. He becomes responsible for that contract, for that agreement. So the document is then created. Sorry, the project is created. So we have a project. Within a project, you're going to have all of the various agreements. So that's at project level. It tells you the reference, the client, the document name. So this is a document sitting within this project. There is a project manager agreement, who it was created by, the date, goes a step further, and this is where you will define who your contributors are. So you will say, I wish to invite a person to contribute. That contributor does not need to be a subscriber. It can be anybody. So he can be sitting in another country. He will receive an email that says, you've been requested by the administrator to add your input to this particular document. Project name. So now this is how you would create a document. You select your document, whatever it may be, a principal agent, an architect, a project manager, a quantity surveyor, a structural, a civil, whichever the agreement may be, and you'll say create document. This is showing you what the version control, showing you between revision 1 and revision 2 of a particular agreement and what changes have been made. You will see it was blank and that was fed in version 2. So you can compare between any version. You can go between version 1 and version 6 if you want. You can pick the comparison. So you select the two versions, click compare, and it pulls up the changes for you. And that's basically end of Jody's E Procsa. What else have we made available? We spoke about the prepayment. We spoke about the credit card facility. So you can either view your document. If you don't want to get involved in the completion, you can just use it as a library or reference. You can use it for a printing facility, or you can use it for the collaboration where you invite other people. Okay, we can move straight on to when John, if you want to move on to the JVCC elements of the product of this service. So unless there's any questions that I can possibly answer around Procsa generally, around the particular service, any questions that you have? Yep.
How do you deal with the signing? Because on your
Signature.
Yeah.
So Adobe has a facility for electronic signature. So it's completely valid in law to sign electronically. If you wish to print, then you can do that as well. So you'll print the actual copy and have a handwritten signature if you wish to go that route as well. So it would cater for both.
But then you need the writer as well, not just the reader.
If you want, I think you're right. If you want, correct. In the reader, it does not have the signing capability. It needs only in the writer. If you have the writer, you're good. You would need writer. Anything else?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm from Adobe, so it depends on
Yes.
whether the person has opened the PDF that they've sent you, so they've really extended the PDF. You can sign it as an individual. You still need to have your own certificate, but you can sign it, or you can use.
So you're saying you don't need writer. You're saying you don't need writer.
No, if you're the signer,
Okay.
the person that's authoring, creating the PDF, needs to create the PDF with what we call read extensions. When they send it out, the person on the other side will then be able to complete it. The person on the other side has two options. They either have to have their own signature, which would be they'd get borrowed a key, or they can use something called an e-signature, which we can chat about afterwards.
Okay.
If it's interesting.
Okay. So there's things I've still got to learn about Adobe there, which I think you're going to speak shortly on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Any other questions for
A
that?
copy within a project, from say the architect to the quantity surveyor to the...
We've allowed copying across disciplines, so we have not limited it only to from project manager to project manager. So we've allowed from across disciplines because a lot of the fields remain the same. So we have allowed that. Obviously, your scope of services is going to be completely not transportable from one to the other, but you'll get your terms and conditions where 80% of the fields will be the same. So you're annexure A. You're annexure A, correct. Okay, so we have provided for that. This has been going through many, many months. We've spent a lot of money going through this development process, getting this collaboration working, and I think we've got to a point where it's a very, very valuable tool, especially in this Procsa document where it's quite an intense process completing, and you do need other parties in the professional team involved. It's not as simple. In possibly JVCC, it's much simpler. It's a one-pager. You don't need to necessarily invite other people, but we found in Procsa it's far more complex, where you want to get the consultants involved between project manager and the engineer, as an example, and get the scope of services 100%. So that's been a process that's taken many, many months of tweaking to get this right. Okay, I'm going to call on Uwe. Uwe is the current CEO of JVCC. Just to give you a brief introduction, where things are with JVCC, what is JVCC for those of you that don't know, and then I will continue again on the electronic service side element related to JVCC.